I don't remember ever even thinking to myself, my fantasy is the stage. It just was. I was so inspired by musical theater, like Guys and Dolls, the character, Adelaide. It was always hard for me, though, because I had such a powerful voice, but I would never get cast in those roles because I was a brunette. So eventually, I bought a wig.
What was it like waiting for that audition?
I knew that I had the best voice. It was just about the look. And I got that wig, and I just went for it. I just figured it out. And I watched the movie over and over again. I read the script over and over again. I remember when I did the audition, I didn't even use the call sheet.
When you got it, what did it feel like?
Oh, it was the greatest moment of high school. I tell you, I still dream about that. I still have these crazy dreams that I get cast for that role, and it's always the same role. Always Adelaide in Guys and Dolls. I remember I was in trouble because I think I was dating someone that my father really hated, or I was just being bad. I remember I was being bad, and my dad was like, "You're not doing the school play. You're not doing that play." And I just remember crying and saying, "Daddy, but I'm so good. Daddy, I'm the best. They gave me the lead." And he would look at me and he'd say, "You're so bad. You're bad."
Were you really that bad?
I was bad.
I want to take you back to being a kid. What made you want to learn music?
I don't know exactly where my affinity for music comes from, but it is the thing that comes easiest to me. When I was like 3 years old, I may have been even younger. My mom always tells this really embarrassing story of me propping myself up and playing the keys like this because I was too, short to get all the way up there, and I used to just go like this on the low end of the piano. I guess she just looked at my dad one day and said we should get her some piano lessons. I started taking from this woman who was amazing. She was so great. She was like a really great friend. I didn't know this at the time, but she was actually a stripper. I remember I used to say, "Why do you have such long nails? Don't you ever cut your nails?" And she used to say, "Someday you'll understand why I don't cut my nails." She had these long nails like I have now. Now I understand. When I would play, I would sometimes be very floppy with my hands because I was so theatrical, so I would get really into it and be really emotional while I was playing classical pieces. I had this one teacher that tied a string to my wrists, and I would play Hanon exercises. They're these really fast scales that go up and down the piano. And then she would put this Pink Panther action figure that we would balance the neck of the Pink Panther on the string, and I would have to play really evenly so that Pink Panther wouldn't fall off the string. I was really, really good at piano. So my first instincts were to work so hard at practicing piano, and I might not have been a natural dancer, but I am a natural musician. That is the thing that I believe that I'm the greatest at.
Tell me about that first CD. What was that first CD you bought?
It was Green Day Dookie with my own money. But my parents got me Stevie Wonder, Signed, Sealed, Delivered, and the Beatles. There were 2 CDs, and they were given to me with a boombox, a little boombox, for Christmas when I was young. They could have chose anything but Stevie Wonder and the Beatles. I mean, it's totally their fault. Don't spoon feed me the Beatles and Stevie Wonder and Bruce Springsteen and Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and Elton John and expect for me not to turn out this way. My dad saw me singing along to his records, and he would pick me up and throw me around the room and laugh and cry with me while I would sing Pink Floyd and Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel records with him.
Were they your dad's records?
Oh yeah, all my dad's. My dad was really into rock and roll. It was this special thing between my parents and I going to see music together. My dad would take me to Arthur's Cafe to see, I think his name was Frankie. Frankie used to sing, "You Sex," remember? And I would always feel really awkward because my dad was there. But that's really what shaped my love for music.
Could you rock out on that piano?
Well, I knew that music on the speakers, but the only music that I knew how to play was classical music. I only knew Beethoven and Mozart and Bach and Chopin and Rachmaninoff. That's all I knew. And then my father gave me for Christmas, it was a Bruce Springsteen songbook for the piano. And on it was Thunder Road, which is my favorite Bruce Springsteen song. And my dad said, if you learn how to play this song, we will take out a loan for our grand piano, a baby grand. It was the hardest thing for me. I was playing these huge pieces, like 15 pages long, and then there was this Bruce Springsteen song. I opened up the book and there was like guitar chords. I was so confused, I didn't understand it. So I just started to read it. And eventually I got it down.
The screen door slams, Mary's dress waves. Like a vision she dances across the porch as the radio plays.
I knew what the song sounded like because my father had been playing it every day since I was a kid, and he would cry every time. He would always cry and he would say, "Baby, I just imagine when you're 18 and you leave me for another man." That's what he used to say. Because the lyrics in that song, "Screen door slams, Mary's dress sways," it's all about the road of life and leaving those behind you. Like a vision she dances across the porch as the radio plays. It was just this beautiful thing with my dad. Bruce represents my youth. And he still is so much of my life now. Whenever I surge down a highway, I can't not think about Bruce Springsteen. It just doesn't happen. That's what's great about real legends. They own the whole interstate.
It's a town full of losers.
It's a town full of losers and we're pulling out of here to win. That lyric is like, who writes lyrics like that? It's a nightmare. And that's why I get so passionate about what I do, is because when I feel like I have finally written a lyric that is real like that, it's those artists that push me forward. I would spend hours listening to music in front of the mirror, in my mother's pearls, in her fake pearls. I didn't care what they were. I wasn't a little girl in that mirror. I was Whitney Houston in The Bodyguard. I was Gloria Estefan on stage. I was whoever I wanted to be. I got discovered singing in a store, in a little boutique where we grew up. There were these two guys that worked at the store. They loved fashion and music, and they loved talking about theater. And I became friends with them because I went into the store one day with my mom. I would go and hang out for hours after school. My mom would say, "Where the are you?" One day I started singing, and one of them said, "Do you have a very nice voice?" I said, "Thank you." He said, "My uncle is a voice teacher. I'll give you his phone number." So I said, "Okay." And I had a classical voice teacher at one point, but I'd never studied anything else. And he said he teaches pop rock vocals. I thought, oh, well, that could be really great because I love like musicals. So I called Don Lawrence, and he listed off all the people that he has worked with. And they included Mick Jagger, Bono, and Christina Aguilera. My heart sank. He was on speaker, and my mother was sitting next to me. I remember we were holding hands, and she just went like this. She started squeezing my hand. So I went in to meet Don, and I sang a song for him. There was an E flat in the song, like a really high, belty note, and I hit the note at the end, and I was really proud. And I didn't hit it very well. Little did I know that I hadn't hit it very well. But it wasn't until I started to work with him that my voice really started to grow and change. And he looked at me one day and he said, "You're a pianist." I said, "Yeah." He says, "I can tell." He said, "Because, you know, the way you understand the scales when we're working, you just really understand what I'm doing." And he said, "You always can tell when I screw up." And he didn't screw up very often, but if there was ever a little sour note, I would... And to me, it was like, yeah, I know. But to him, it was, "You're a musician." And I was 13. He said to me, and these were the words that changed my life, Don Lawrence. He looked at me and he said, "Have you ever thought about writing music?" I said, "Well, when I was young, you know, I would notate strange things on my Mickey Mouse staff paper, and I've written poetry, but I've never really written a song." He said, "I think you should write a song. I think you would be good at writing songs." And I said, "Okay." Just a few weeks later, I was in the car with my dad and my mom. We were driving back from seeing my grandma, and I had my headphones on, and I was singing my pants off in the car. Probably not very well because I had the headphones on, you can't hear. My dad said, "Hey kid, you're not on stage yet." And I burst into tears, and I started screaming, and my mother was like, "What is going on with you?" And we drove to the front of my parents' place. My dad was driving the car back to the garage, you know, because it's New York, so you got to drive it to the garage 10 blocks away and then walk home. Pain in the ass. My dad was always gone for about 15 minutes. By the time he'd gotten home, I'd written my first song. It was called "To Love Again."
What's that song about?
The song is about being in love and then losing it with someone, and then saying we can find what made us fall in love in the first place. And in hindsight, I'm like, what the was I talking about? I was 13. What the hell did I know about love? But I think it was my innocence. You know, of course, my first song had to be some giant, dramatic power ballad. I grew up 4 blocks from Lincoln Center. As someone who loved theater so much, I used to walk by and see the long lines into the opera and long lines into the ballet, and I would dream of being a performer. Over the years, as I got older, I became more rebellious. Sometimes I would sneak out. I was kind of bad. I would go down to all kinds of places with my friends in the village. When I grew up, by Lincoln Center, I wasn't able to access all of the things that were on the Lower East Side. And I wasn't in a school that was enriching me culturally in that way. It was like I needed to myself up and go lick the ground for a couple of years to understand New York City and understand a whole different side of the pavement. In one way, I couldn't wait to get out. But in another way, it wasn't that I wanted to get out of New York, it's that I wanted to get deeper into New York. When I first moved down there, I just didn't have a lot of money to pay rent. I think it was $1,100 a month. And that was a lot of money to make. I go dance. I got a job as a waitress, and my dad paid half my month's rent for 3 months in a row until I got on my feet. And then he said, you have a year to make something happen, or I'm gonna make you go back to school.
What were you looking for?
I wanted to live alone, live in solitude with my music and read poetry and be overly dramatic about everything. And that's what I did.
Do you remember what your first show was like?
Remember I had on a big white hippie skirt, a green tube top, and I put a flower in my hair. They played a bunch of songs that nobody knew. Didn't give a I did like an hour and a half set. Isn't that funny? My first show, what was I thinking? An hour and a half? Who gives a shit? Nobody knows who you are. I was so delusional. I play for an hour and a half now. I have songs people want to hear. But back then I just thought to myself, well, if I'm a real professional, I will give off the illusion of professionalism, like I know what I'm doing. Always after the show, someone would go, you got some pipes. You really got some pipes. Or I like that one song, Hollywood. I like that song. There's this one song that I had called Hollywood. Hollywood, Hollywood. And then I was like, I don't want to be stuck at the piano anymore. I want to dance. I want to do something a little bit more revolutionary for my neighborhood. So I thought, okay, so what is nobody doing? And that was when I met Lady Starlight. I'm like, I'm Lady Gaga. She goes, I'm Lady Starlight. So we're both ladies. And we became friends. And I called her one day and I said, you know what would really piss me off? She said, what? I said, if there were 2 hot girls in bikinis playing pop music with synthesizers and turntables, dancing to heavy metal records in between each song. She goes, that would really piss me off. Let's do it. We used to light Hairspray on fire, and we would get in so much trouble, Lord Jesus. I remember at the knitting factory, we were opening up for the semi-precious weapons, and the promoter was like, you f***ing hookers! Do you want to burn the place down? And we're listening to Metal Militia by Metallica. We were laughing backstage. We were like, oh no, we're never going to get to play the knitting factory again. And then I said to her, or they will never forget us. There was one moment when I thought we were onto something. We performed at Rockwood Music Hall. It's teeny tiny. It fits 30 people in it. Yeah. This really little stage. Barely fit our stuff on it. And our turntables, we didn't have a lot of money, so they were like those really ones that if you even breathe on them, they skip. This was like super inexpensive, but nobody on the Lower East Side was doing anything even remotely like it. In fact, it was kind of uncool to be doing it, so it became cool because we were the only people doing anything like it. And we would plug in all these crazy party favors, and we would throw glitter, and we would dance in matching bikinis that cost us $4 to make. And I got dub plates pressed in Brooklyn with my beats on them, so she would spin the dub plates. I remember we were wearing Iron Maiden t-shirts. We'd made these hot pink fluorescent headbands. We were posed like this, and our song by Heavy Metal Kids, Hey Little Girl, came on. You got what it takes, you know what I want. And we used to just freestyle and try to match each other. We used to sometimes say we were a pop burlesque show. And I'll never forget it. I was in the middle of singing my song, Blueberry Kisses, Blueberry Kisses. My lips, they misses, oh yeah. And Colleen looked over at me and she goes, psst, Gaga. I looked at her and she goes, look outside. I looked outside and there was like at least 100 people in the streets with cameras out, staring through the window. She looked at me and she goes, something's happening. I don't know what it is, but something is happening. I just kept playing. I just remember my dad came and he got really, really upset. And he didn't talk to me for weeks.
What was that like?
I remember feeling really sad, and I remember feeling really misunderstood, and I remember feeling like I'd let him down. But then I also remember thinking to myself, someday he will understand why I did all of this. And I was right.
So Gaga, you gotta tell me, where does all this inspiration come from?
I became so obsessed with the poetry of and the spirit of rock and roll and how I could synthesize it into pop music. I mean, I was playing Boys, Boys, Boys with Lady Starlight when I was 20. I'm 25, I'm still playing it, except I'm playing it for 60,000 people in Mexico. It's completely mental. Lady Starlight always says to me, she says, you're a musician that happened to become a pop singer. But I always wanted to be a pop singer. That was the ultimate sort of dream come true for me, was that I would work endlessly towards this experience with music, with songwriting, with performance art, and how I could bridge fashion and technology and pop culture into one performance, and then make it commercial and translate that idea, that very theatrical idea that so many people didn't understand. How could I translate that to the whole world? And that's why I never backed down, no matter how many radio people said I don't get it, no matter how many people said we're not sure that this show will play very well in the Midwest. I never backed down.
I didn't used to be brave. In fact, I was not very brave at all. But you have made me so brave. Tonight I want you to forget all of your insecurities. I want you to reject anyone or anything that's ever made you feel like you don't belong or don't fit in. Maybe you feel like you'll never get an A on that test, or you'll never win a Grammy, or you just remember that you are a superstar. Cleveland, Ohio.
The biggest surprise to me has been my relationship with my fans. They've changed my life. The fans are the thing that you can't learn. They were the instrument in the music that nobody taught me about. They're a giant disco ball, thousands of tiny little mirrors. The commercial success that I've had has been mind-blowing. I'm the girl that everyone said no and shook their head and said, I don't get it.
I believe, like, we need failure to succeed. I mean, I can't learn from success. I need to fail.
I remember when I got dropped from my first record label, I just said, Mommy, let's go see Grandma. And I cried on my grandmother's couch. She looked at me and she goes, I'm gonna let you cry for the rest of the day. And then you have to stop crying and you have to go kick some ass. I've never told Beyonce this, but I remember laying on my grandmother's couch crying, and a Destiny's Child video came on. I remember watching Beyonce and thinking, oh, she's a star. I want that. I want to be on MTV. And now I'm in music videos with Beyonce. In a way, there was something liberating about leaving because I was able to define my individuality for myself. I think so much of what I do as an artist is about that. From first to second and out of the third album, a lot of the sort of major theme that's carried through all three of them is that I define my own fame, I define my own existence, I define my own identity, I define my own beauty for myself. No one can define who you are. I'm a perpetual underdog. When I was in high school, I remember once some of the girls from my class, they were hanging out with some boys that I knew also. And I went to meet some friends for some pizza that were at the same pizzeria. And the boys picked me up and threw me in the trash can. On the street. On the corner of my block while all the other girls from the school were leaving and could see me in the trash. And everybody was laughing, and I was even laughing. I had that nervous giggle. And I just remember like holding back the tears and the lip quivering and don't let them see you. And I remember even one of the girls looking at me like, are you about to cry? You're pathetic. That's what it felt like. You're pathetic. Are you about to cry? And I remember I didn't tell anybody. That's what I remember. I remember I didn't tell anybody. I remember I didn't want to tell my parents because it was too embarrassing. I think it didn't sink in with me how bullying affected me until later in my life. I knew that it affected me deeply, but it wasn't until a little bit later that I realized how much it affected me and how much it was still very present. I think it took me to get to know my fans and to see similar struggles in them for me to access that wound in myself. And I think that, in a way, the fans have been a key to my heart, unlocking things about myself that I didn't want to handle or deal with or address that make me a greater songwriter.
Was your heritage to you as a kid growing up?
So important. I'm really quite traditional, actually, contrary to what some people may think about me. I'm quite traditional in the family sense.
Tell me what happens on Sundays.
Sunday, we make red gravy, tomato, pomodoro, and it's usually made with fresh tomatoes that my father and my mother go to our friends, the Maniscalcos, and we boil the tomatoes and add the basil and the garlic and the salt and the pepper and these huge vats in the backyard, and then jar it for the year. And then on Sunday, we put it in the pot, we spice it, let it simmer all day, and make sausage and meatballs and pasta we've since switched to whole wheat pasta from my dad's heart. After a while, those Italian men, you know, gotta start eating healthy.
Tell me about your relationship with your Aunt Joanne.
Well, I never knew her. She died when my dad was really young. But it was sort of this, she was this enigmatic figure in my life. This person that died that meant so much to my dad's family. I just felt really connected to her. She was really into poetry and crochet, and she was a painter, and my grandmother had her works of art all over the house. I think that she, in a way, makes us closer to our dad, makes us understand him more, because he's very strict and he's very protective, and I think that losing her contributed to that. He just never wanted to let us go. I printed her poetry in my first album. I remember I brought it to my dad and I said she never got to be a published author, so she is now.
That's so rad.
Yeah, I surprised him. He opened up the booklet. People always ask me how I have so much energy or how I work so hard, and I always sort of humorously but half seriously say, I think I have two hearts. I think that maybe when my mom gave birth to me, she passed along the spirit of my dad's sister. I don't know if everyone believes in things like that, but I'm Italian, so like I really believe in things like that. I believe in ghosts and bad luck. I'm Italian. So I think she lives through me. Every night before the show, when we pray, we say Joanne before we go on stage.
For me, it's all about family.
You know, I'm a pop singer. People say, your life must be so hard, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you can't go anywhere, blah, blah, blah. Criticism, scrutiny, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, you don't know about scrutiny. You don't know what my grandmother went through. You know what my mother has been through, my father. And the dream of my family to have a legacy. The dream. My grandparents came here from nothing. My father was the first to go to college. My mother was the first to go to school. It's like the dream of my family. You know, my father wasn't always like the most open-minded person. And watching his life change, meeting the fans, watching my mother's life change, my sister, my grandparents, I feel now like we just have this greater purpose as a family. At the heart of all of this, there's someone very young and Italian deep inside me that just really wants to continue the legacy of her family, for her father, for my dad.
I have a love affair with New York. When I'm pulled away from it, like, I try to find New York wherever I go.
Right.
If I'm in Tokyo,
Well, this is how I get home. My leather jacket's like my Dorothy slippers. That's why I changed when we sat down. You said, I want to ask you about New York. I said, you better get my leather. I wrote so many songs on this new album about New York City. I mean, every song on all my albums has some relationship to New York City, but one in particular, Marry the Night. That record is about my husband, New York.
Tell me about that. You gotta break that down for me, Gaga.
Fernando Garibay, who is the musical director on the album, one of my favorite things about him is that he collaborates. He's just so free. You know, we've been working together for years. I said, I'm so excited. I feel like, you know, You and I have yet to have our big hit record. We've never conceived. They kept saying to him, I don't want to do anything I've done before. I don't want to sound like anything I've done before. I don't want to feel like anything I've done before. I want it to be new. And I heard, down, 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 down. And it's these church bells. He goes, your show is a religion. So your fans are a cult. Down, 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 down. It's this epic music, just so big. And I started to cry. He said, what's wrong? And I said, I can't believe you hear me so big. So I sat down and I'm gonna marry the night. I won't give up on my life. Just right away, just like started singing. I'm gonna marry the dark. I mean, just like went right in. And then I wrote the verses. I hadn't written the chorus yet. And I said, oh, you know what, I'll write the chorus after the show. And then I remember he said, okay, let's listen down. And I was starting to walk out the door. And then the chords for the chorus kicked in. And I went, I'm gonna marry the night. Like right away, out of nowhere. I'm not gonna cry anymore. Out of nowhere. Just went for it. And it was just like, there it was. Mama, marry the night. And I was like, it's like Whitney, but imagine if Bruce Springsteen had a baby with Whitney Houston. That's what it is. So that's what it is. And then he said, okay, that's what it is. And that was it. We made a baby, finally. After all that fornication, miserably long and tedious, Fernando and I finally conceived. I'm gonna marry the dark, gonna make love to the stark. I'm a soldier to my own emptiness. I'm a winner. Nothing's too cool to take me from you. New York is not just a tan that you'll never lose. It's never gonna go away. The tan of New York never goes away. After the Fame and the Fame Monster, I had this tremendous feeling of loss because I hadn't been in New York for so long. I missed my friends so much. I felt haunted by my past. And then I sort of woke up one day and I was like, what the f*** are you crying about? Just go back. I literally knocked on people's doors while they were asleep in Brooklyn. Just, it's me, open up. You know, toothbrushes with foam hanging out of their mouth. And what are you doing here? Me and my best friend have 2 bikes, Karen and Henry, from Goodfellas. And we would just ride around and ride to the bridge, ride down the old streets. All the neon signs popping out of the sky. All the darkness lifting into fluorescent colors. All the dirt turning into gold dust and rainbows. The way I see New York City, it's so otherworldly. It's this neon Roy Lichtenstein look at life. It's just this completely magical and beautiful, joyful place. That represents for me feeling the exact same way now that I did back when I had no record deal and back when I had no voice in the world other than my very sweet and small one that was shouting on Stanton Street. And it's so important for me because in a very strange way, when you travel as much as I do and you see so much, the world gets smaller. You're on a plane and you get off and you're in 50 different countries and it all starts to turn into something that's very linear, and it's really not. The world is wide and huge and endless. When I ride Henry reminds me how big the world is because it takes so long to ride 20 blocks in that city. It's a whole mile. And it feels very different from being in the backseat of a car or being on an airplane or being on a stage where, the stage is this one city block. When I ride around and I look at the stars and I look up into the sky, I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes I just don't do that anymore. I'm so busy working. I'm trying to become better for my fans, but sometimes what will be better for them is when I look up into the sky and I say, well, that's the brightest star. Sometimes you just gotta look. I ride around and my security gets so mad at me. They're like, where have you been? I'm like, just say I went on a bike ride. It's no big deal. What's the worst that could happen? Someone says, are you Gaga? Yeah. Ching ching.
I'm gonna marry the night. I won't give up on my life. I'm a warrior queen, live passionately tonight. I'm gonna lace up my boots, throw on some